All right, heading on into our feature match area for round 5 here. I believe I saw the deck list of one of these players is playing New Perspectives combo. Let's take a peek here. Is that did I lie? Nope. Yeah, that appears to be what's going on Goblin Credible side of the board here. So let's pull up New Perspectives for people who are new to Magic the Gathering. Weren't playing when this card was legal in Standard. So, New Perspectives here says, when it enters the battlefield, you draw 3 cards, a 6-mana enchantment, and as long as you have 7 or more cards in hand, you may pay 0 rather than pay the cycling costs of your cards. On the other side of the board here, we have what I assume is going to be kind of a tough matchup for New Perspectives. We have not only an aggressive deck, but a discard Thoughtseize Kroxa-based aggressive deck that's going to be good at making sure the New Perspective player does not get to keep 7 cards in hand.
And they are tanking hard on this one land here. Okay, they put it down. This hand is better because you can cast your spells, but worse because you don't have Thoughtseize.
Correct, yeah, and so the red-black aggressive deck on Cricket's side isn't pure linear aggro. It has Thoughtseize and Bone Crusher Giants and these other interactive elements to it, but unfortunately, this is not a matchup where if you're Cricket, that you want those interactive elements, right? This is definitely I need to get them dead as quickly as possible matchup, and this hand is not well suited at getting their opponent dead.
It's not, but Goblin Credible is also not particularly well suited to making themselves not dead. So,
because let's take a peekaboo here. What kind of anti-aggro cards do we have in Incredible's list? Let's take a peek. We've got. Are they just on like the full linear ignore you plan? We've got Growth Spiral, Shadow of the Grave.
This Shark Typhoon is about to trade with this Mire Triton. It's ready.
I think Shark Typhoon is basically the only interactive element in this New Perspective on the bottoms. And I'm wondering, so this is round 5, and we're double elimination. So that means New Perspectives is at least 3-1, right? So
yep.
It'll be interesting to go back. And this is one of the things that's great about Melee's data. Like, if a deck like this does well, you can actually go back and look through and see, okay, what did they play against to get their 3 or 4 match wins to get to wherever they got? It's not like, in a paper tournament where you see a rogue deck do well and you're like, okay, were like they beating the good decks in the format, or did they hit a good pairings matchups, or what was the deal?
Right. I think it's super interesting to listen to people talk about tournaments they did well in. And a lot of times when they do that, they'll say like, yeah, the best deck, I only hit that matchup like once.
Yep.
Like, oh, well, that's probably
correct.
that's a way to beat it, right?
That's and that's something too, like when people often come on when I'm streaming and they're like, okay, well, what's your record? And it's like, well, the record doesn't really matter so much as like the details of why that record is what it is, or like how the games have played out more so than just like what the raw game win loss ratio is. Because as Magic often has games where small breaks or small mistakes mean the difference between wins and losses, where like, a 4-1 could easily be a 2-3 or a 1-4 if just a couple of small things break different ways in different matches.
Right, for sure.
And this is, again, talking about the structure of the tournament, this is open deck list, so if you're on the red-black side, you know what your opponent has, or more specifically what they don't have in terms of interaction. So like there isn't a languish that you need to be playing around. There isn't spot removal. You just need to like vomit your hand out and attack them down before they can get New Perspectives going.
Right. I definitely think a very linear deck like what Goblin Credible is playing gets a good bit worse with open deck lists, because a lot of your wins with a deck like this are going to come from your opponent keeping a hand that isn't really functional in the matchup that you're playing.
Sure.
And that just can't happen in this situation. Also, Goblin is holding on to this growth spiral, and it's really weird to me. I'm not sure what they're holding it for. It might be to put this Mystic Sanctuary in mid-combo. Because they've had a couple places where they could have easily slotted it into their curve, and they're deliberately choosing not to.
Yep. Chef Monitor here, a reprint that slots nicely into this archetype. So it's cycling, so it helps you with your combo, but it also allows you to ramp nicely to get to your 6 mana sooner. If Goblin Credible finds New Perspectives next turn. Could they potentially combo? They don't have that many things that cycle in their hand,
I
right?
I think that's what they're optimizing for. I think that's why you don't see them cycling this growth spiral and Sheffet monitor. I think what they're trying to do is say, okay, um, I have to draw new perspectives to win. And once I draw new perspectives, I need Sheffet monitor then to rank me on that turn. All right, disagree. They disagree. We're ramping now. We are putting a land onto the battlefield. Going to be 6 mana, going up to 7. You can. Oh, all right, all right. Stuff is happening.
Step one, let's pull New Perspectives up here
Draw
again.
3 cards. Cycle.
If you
Cycle.
if you can win from here as Goblin Credible, I can see why you could justify playing your deck with no interaction, right?
They should be able to. What's the win con that
Well,
they're playing?
you could
Is it
you could theoretically brick off, right? Like
you
just
could.
not hit enough cyclers.
It's pretty unlikely to break off from this position.
There's a Thassa's Oracle in their deck, is what they have.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, so you end up making a lot of mana here because you have Lotus Field and the Vizier of Tumbling Stance that can untap it for free.
Sure.
All right. Out of cards, but
No, don't explore Growth Spiral. I think you're supposed to Growth Spiral, right? Because if you hit the untapper, you can explore off a Lotus Field.
Yeah, probably.
And you can't Growth Spiral off a Lotus Field. I think we're dead now. Yeah, I think we're dead.
Yeah, so they don't have enough mana.
To
All right, that
Shallow
was
Grave.
sad. Sad.
They needed to find Shallow Grave there before.
And to be fair, they had a lot of their deck. Like I would be unsurprised if all of them were in like the bottom half of their deck at that point.
What is that card called? It's not Shallow Grave. It's Shallow something.
I don't know what shadow. It's shadow of the grave.
Shadow of the. I was close. Shallow Grave's a reanimation card. So
Yes.
Shadow of the Grave was the card they're looking for. They return all cards to your hand that you cycled or discarded this turn. So had Goblin Credible actually found this card before they had to spend their mana, they likely would have won the game that turn. They would have picked up everything they had cycled and gone back.
Smucciolo, that's a funny username. Brings up a good point in chat that they couldn't get a land with a Sheffet monitor during that sequence because they drew too many basics. And if they had one more basic, they still had a land drop for turn. So they would have had the 2 mana to Shallow Grave.
To be fair though, they're like pretty likely to draw a basic or 2, right? Like they're drawing a pretty significant portion of their deck. So I don't know that it's like that much of a low roll, but it is worth pointing out that had they been a little bit more fortunate and high rolled, perhaps that they could have gotten there.
It's very important to always have time to blame variance. You always got to blame every time you lose because of variance. All right, so what are they doing? So the new special deck is putting in the one Drakehaven. So that's a cool plan B.
They have a few copies of Eliminate. They have Easy Prey is a really sweet one in their deck.
Yeah.
Let's pull that one up on stream. So this fits. I'm kind of surprised to not see some of these in their main deck, if I'm being honest, just because like it's a piece of interaction that like also fits with your combo, but I like that it exists in their 75.
Got single mind determination.
It's only linear, beep beep, go fast. Ugh. Do you keep this because you can cycle the Wishboon? The boon of wish? Because like you hate mulliganing against the Thoughtseize deck, right?
Yeah, and it's really awkward with new perspectives that if you mulligan and they Thoughtseize you,
it becomes harder to
you
combo.
need 7 cards in your hand to have the card do stuff.
Yep.
All right. Well, at least you put back the Oracle here. Okay. So they can't because I'm pretty sure. Well, so post board I saw Zenith Flare, so that's a way to win, kind of like manual mode.
Sure.
But I'm pretty sure without Zenith Flare, you just die if they Thoughtseize your Oracle.
So on Cricket's side, there's Heartless Act in our deck post board. Why do we have Heartless Act in our deck post board?
I saw Niv with it, but I don't think Goblin brought it in.
Okay. So you just be worried about Niv Mizzet? Sure.
I mean, Niv Mizzet is pretty scary.
He is,
Five
yeah,
five.
and I mean, like, especially when you're drawing, tons of cards in a
Right, right,
turn.
right, yeah.
Something
He'll,
something that I really like from Cricket's side here, we see even though Cricket has Thoughtseize, they're waiting to cast it. And I like this because Goblin Credible's key card costs 6 mana, right? So you want to give Goblin more chances to draw the cards you actually want to Thoughtseize as opposed to firing off Thoughtseize right away super early.
yep, then I like casting it this turn because you know that they're going to be probably ramping with a growth spiral. Interesting. They didn't put a land in there with the spiral. All right, that and if they send the oops, that was a misplay.
So we get to get in for 5 here, and I feel like this game's going to be over very quickly on from Cricket side of the board. Like they've got 5 now 6 power in play. They've got Croxa in hand to pressure Goblin's hand even more.
Yeah, that does 1 damage and gains 1 life and is uncastable. Um, it's not great. Yeah, and this
Even
is sort of the problem against the Thoughtseize deck, right? Like even if you draw new perspectives, you can't
get going because it
just
requires you to have 7 cards in your
three
hand.
cards, and
Yep.
that's not gonna be enough when you're so far behind on board.
Yep. So we're like trying to figure out like, is there a way we can wiggle out of this? Like we're at 12. I think the answer is no. Like we're not dead next turn, but I don't know that we have a way to like get back in it, especially once like this Croxa comes down and like takes another card out of our hand. And I feel like and Cricket is playing against, this is a bit of a brew, and maybe they weren't around when New Perspectives was legal last time. They might undervalue using Croxa to take a card out of their hand this turn, which I actually think is very important.
Yeah, for sure. I could definitely see them wanting to prioritize the Ashiok. Um, but because then they turn off Shafet Monitor, which I think is a pretty key part of their combo.
Sure, but like you just get to chef it in response here at the moment, right? Oh,
Yeah,
you're saying you can't chef it mid combo then with
yeah,
Ashiok. Okay.
it makes it a lot harder to generate mana. I, don't know, I sort of think it's just going to beat down and it's not going to matter. Um, but looks at this Zenith Flare. One. There is one cycling card in the graveyard.
So see the Zenith player get in there, not too surprising. What there's no sweepers in this deck, right? So like we're just dead.
Yeah,
Like there's no languish to draw to. There's no ritual of we only have 1 black mana, even if we had those.
yeah. TZTFG, if you discard anything, you can get it back with Shadow of the Grave.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Shadow of the Grave is not limited to just cycling things. It's just things that were discarded this turn, which is kind of a neat anti-thought seed. Like we're talking about how Thoughtseize and Crocs are like really good in these matchups, and that's kind of a neat anti-card for that. So a little bit of a rough showing there for the New Perspectives deck. They got really close in the. And honestly, I wasn't expecting them to get as close as they got in that first game to popping off like
Yeah.
they did.
Yeah, I think they'd gotten a little more fortunate in the first game. We could have forced the game 3, and then they're on the play, which gives them a good bit of,
Yep.
let them try to get ahead of stuff.
Great. So, fingers crossed. We're going to have a time shifted feature match. So let's go ahead and dip on over to that, see how it goes.